Hi, my name is Orchi, and on this channel, I usually talk about books I've been reading and whatever thought I've had about them, because what are books for if not for discussing? But today, I wanna venture into the ancient Greek myths and all the many plays and stories that have been written and rewritten about them. So, the ancient Greeks, amongst many other things, were a reservoir of stories, to put it very simply. But the ancient Greeks certainly enjoyed the art of storytelling, and the Greek myths have almost as many versions as probably people have ideologies and prejudices, because they had all these many characters, gods and heroes and deities and sorceresses and powerful beings, and even just clever mortals who knew how to put up a good fight and deal with the gods. And they had all of these many characters, but there were so many interpretations of them and so many ways of telling their stories that the ancient Greeks just might have laid the groundworks for even contemporary storytelling. I think the Greek characters were the ancient Greek characters that and people and personas that populated their many mythologies and plays and tragedies were multifaceted and rounded enough to have more than endured the test of time, and even now resurface in our fictional characters that are so famous or popular amongst our age. To list just a few to make my point, if you've seen or read the very popular Gone Girl, starring Amy Dunn, its psychopathic protagonist, who we consider to be kind of a groundbreaking character, or at least I've seen online discourse about how Amy Dunn was such a groundbreaking character, because here was an evil woman and who was at the center of the story, and there were no attempts to justify her actions. But honestly, I thought that Amy Dunn's character was incredibly reminiscent of the ancient. She wasn't Greek, but the powerful sorceress of ancient Greek mythology, Medea, and even to some extent, Circe, who might be the one most famous witch of Greek mythology. And I thought it was interesting that the wildly popular show running on HBO called Game of Thrones, one of their main, most evil characters was also called Circe. And I thought that was a deliberate choice. It was very interesting that the Circe in Game of Thrones was from a house that had a lion as its symbol, while the Circe of the myths, the powerful witch, was also known to keep lions as pets. So clearly, the original Circe was in the writer's mind in some way or form. And then more recently, a related show would be House of the Dragon, and their characterization of the Helena Targaryen is also very reminiscent of Cassandra, the Trojan princess who was cursed and blessed with clairvoyance. I thought the similarities between them two were almost hard to ignore. And then I, Helen of Troy, who Hollywood has exploited to the fullest. might also just have been the original femme fatale, depending on whose version of Helen's story you read. And even though in recent years, in popular media, the whole rebooting popular shows with all female casts have become a thing, and one would have you think that Hollywood invented putting women at the center of shows. Um, story Stories have always been told about people, men or and women, and the ancient Greeks, many many millennia ago, were already doing that. Stories are stories, and people are people. Um, and in that vein, I wanna talk about um, the play Medea by Euripides. Euripides was a very famous playwright in ancient Greece. He was a little controversial in his time, and maybe even now, but he pretty much wrote plays about a lot of the characters who were involved in the Trojan War, and also adjacent events in Greek myth. And Medea might be one of his more famous plays. So the thing about ancient Greek myths was, while all of their characters did have a very well developed complexity where they were almost real people with real motivations, a lot of the time the Greeks had a penchant for attributing their heroes or witches or mortals motivations and impulses and weaknesses to the malevolence of their gods, because our idea of a god and the ancient Greeks' idea of gods were very different. Their gods were powerful, but not necessarily very kind. And that was just how it was and how people thought back in those days. But Euripides made his characters think for themselves. The gods are still there, the gods are still participants in his plays, but his main characters often make a lot of choices for themselves of their own free will, not prompted by any god's little machinations. And Medea might just be the one who is the most anomalous of the lot, because here is a woman who was straight up evil, or at least did really evil things, and there's no godly justification for it. It's just what she did. I mean, there's plenty of Greek tragedies where people do heinous, heinous stuff. Um, but, a lot of the time it's like, oh, they were driven out of their mind, or some god cast a spell on them and just made them do something as atrocious as killing their own family. But Medea here is evil all on her own. And I guess it's you also have to remember that Medea is not entirely mortal. Medea is related to the single most famous witch, Circe. She's her niece. And her father was also a very powerful sorcerer and a king. And she's the granddaughter of the sun god. So she herself is a divine being, not a mortal. Just a little background that Medea runs away from home with Jason, who she marries because she was in love with him. And when this play begins, and I want to do a little bit of a reading of the play because I just have to say that nobody can do Euripides' characters as much justice as he himself. But in this play, we're at a point where Medea has been with Jason for a while. They have 2 kids together, so this is a relationship that has lasted a while. But Jason is cheating or is leaving her, abandoning her, betraying her, and that's where we start off in the play. And I really want to read this out as well because the opening scene is very interesting because it's not Medea who's talking in the beginning, it's her staff, it's a nurse and a tutor and people who are in her employment. And they're talking about her, and that's how you're introduced to her in the play before she herself makes a glorious appearance. But it's a very interesting introduction by people who actually like her and are loyal to her. So, without talking anymore or giving anything more away, I'll just get to the play. Um, I'm gonna start with the list of characters. Don't worry, it's like a very short list. There's not too many people populating this play. This is not a Russian novel. So here's the list of characters: nurse, tutor to Medea's two sons, Medea herself, chorus of Corinthian women. Greek tragedies or plays tended to have a chorus, and they serve the function of somebody that the main character could talk to and express their thoughts to. And that's how we, the audience, find out what they're thinking about. Creon, king of Corinth, and Medea and Jason are in Corinth when this play starts. Jason, her husband, Aegis, king of Athens, and an old friend of Medea's, and somebody who Medea contacts as so since the king of Athens is a friend of Medea's, Athens is somewhere that Medea can always seek refuge in. A messenger, and Medea's two children, her two sons. The scene is being set before Jason's house in Corinth. Nurse. If only they had never gone, if the Argo's hull never had winged out through the grey blue jaws of rock and on towards Colchis, if that pine on Pylian slopes had never felt the axe and fallen to put oars into those heroes' hands who went at Peleus' bidding to fetch the golden fleece, then neither would Medea, my mistress, ever have set sail for the walled town of Iolcus, mad with love for Jason, nor would she, when Peleus' daughters at her instance killed their father, have come with Jason and her children to live here. In Corinth, where coming as an exile, she has earned the citizens' welcome. While to Jason, she's all obedience, and in marriage that's the saving thing. But now her world has turned to enmity and wounds her where her affection's deepest. Jason has betrayed her own sons and mistress for a royal bed, for alliance with the king of Corinth. He has married Glauce, Creon's daughter. Poor Medea, scorned and shamed, she raves, invoking every vow and solemn pledge that Jason made her, and calls the gods as witnesses. What thanks she has received for her fidelity. She will not eat, she lies collapsed in agony, dissolving the long hours in tears. Since first she heard of Jason's wickedness, she has not raised her eyes or moved her cheek from the hurt ground. And when her friends reason with her, she might be a rock or wave of the sea. For all she hears, unless, maybe, she turns away, her lovely head speaks to herself alone and wails aloud for her dear father, her own land and home, which she betrayed and left to come here with this man, who now spurns and insults her. Poor Medea, now she learns through pain what blessings they enjoy who are not uprooted from their native land. She hates her sons, to see them is no pleasure to her. I am afraid some dreadful purpose is forming in her mind. She is a frightening woman, no one who makes an enemy of her will carry off an easy victory. Here come the boys back from their running. They have no thought of this cruel blow that's fallen on their mother. Well, they're young. Young heads and painful thoughts don't go together. Enter the tutor with Medea's two sons. Tutor. Old nurse and servant of my mistress's house, tell me, what are you doing standing out here by the door, all alone talking to yourself, harping on trouble? What does Medea say to being left alone? Old friend, tutor of Jason's sons, an honest slave, suffers in her own hurt the blow that strikes her mistress. It was too much, I couldn't bear it. I had to come out here and tell my mistress's wrongs to earth and heaven. Poor woman, has she not stopped crying yet? Stopped crying? I envy you. Her grief is just born, not yet half grown. Tutor, poor fool. Though she's my mistress and I shouldn't say it. She had better save her tears, she has not heard the worst. Nurse, the worst? What now? Don't keep it from me. What has happened? Tutor, why? Nothing's happened. I'm sorry I said anything. Nurse, look, we're both slaves together. Don't keep me in the dark. Is it so great a secret? I can hold my tongue. Tutor, I'd gone along to the benches where the old men play at dice next to the holy fountain of Perrine. Though they thought I was not listening, and I heard one say that Creon, king of Corinth, means to send these boys away from here, to banish them and their mother too. Whether the story's true, I don't know. I hope not. Nurse, but surely Jason won't stand by and see his sons banished, even if he has a quarrel with their mother. Tutor, old love is ousted by new love. Jason's no friend to this house. Nurse, then we're lost if we must add new trouble to old before we're rid of what we had already. Tutor, but listen, it's no time to tell media this. Keep quiet, say nothing about it. Nurse, children, do you hear what sort of father Jason is to you? My curse on... No curse, he is my master, all the same. He is guilty, he has betrayed those near and dear to him. Tutor, what man's not guilty? It's taken you a long time to learn. These boys are nothing to their father, he's in love. Nurse, run into the house, boys, everything will be all right. The children move away a little. You do your best to keep them by themselves as long as she's in this dark mood. Don't let them go to her. I've watched her watching them, her eye like a wild bull's. There's something that she means to do, and I know this. She'll not relax her rage till it has found its victim. God grant she strike her enemies and not her friends. Media's voice is heard from inside the house. Media, oh, what misery, what wretchedness, what shall I do if only I were dead? Nurse, there, you can hear, it is your mother, racking her hurt, racking her anger. Quick now, children, hurry indoors, and don't go within sight of her, or anywhere near her. Keep a safe distance. Her mood is cool, her nature dangerous, her will fierce and intractable. Come on now, in with you both at once. The children go in, and the tutor follows. The dark cloud of her lamentations is just beginning. Soon, I know, it will burst aflame as her anger rises, deep in passion and unrelenting. What will she do now, stung with insult? Media, who is indoors. Do I not suffer? Am I not wronged? Should I not weep? Children, your mother is hated and you are cursed. Death take you with your father and perish his whole house. Nurse, oh, the pity of it, poor Medea. Your children, why? What have they to do with their father's wickedness? Why hate them? I am sick with fear for you, children, terror of what may happen. The mind of a queen is a thing to fear. A queen is used to give commands, not obeying them, and her rage once roused is hard to appease. To have learned to live on the common level is better. No grand life for me. Just peace and quiet as I grow old. The better way, neither great nor mean, is best by far in name and practice. To be rich and powerful brings no blessing. Only more utterly is the prosperous house destroyed when the gods are angry. The nurse got a little bit of a philosophy in here. Anyways, enter the chorus of Corinthian women. Chorus. I heard her voice. I heard that unhappy woman from Colchis, still crying, not come yet. Oh, nurse, tell us about her. As I stood by the door, I heard her crying inside the palace, and my own heart suffers too. When Jason's house is suffering, for that is where my loyalty lies. Nurse, Jason's house? It no longer exists. All that is finished. Jason is a prisoner in a princess's bed, and Medea is in her room, melting her life away in tears. No word from any friend can give her comfort. Medea, still from indoors, come, flame of the sky, pierce through my head. What do I gain from living any longer? Oh, how I hate living. I want to end my life, leave it behind, and die. Okay, I'll take a pause here to talk about the beginning. This sort of gives you an introduction to what's going on. This is clearly a play about a lover scorned, the need for revenge, the anger one feels at being betrayed. It's a tragedy, a Greek tragedy. Things are obviously not going to go too well. But what is interesting is that the people employed by Jason and Medea are much more loyal to Medea than Jason. The nurse clearly has contempt for Jason's betrayal, which sort of tells you that Medea is a charming woman. people like her. She has people who are loyal to her here. Even though at the same time, this nurse and the tutor and even the Corinthian woman, the chorus, are perfectly aware that, like from the way they talk about her, they clearly know that she's a dangerous woman. She's powerful and she knows how to use her powers. In the very first monologue, the nurse tells us that Medea has used her sorcery and witchcraft to murder people before. This is a malevolent and powerful being. I mean, she's not mortal, but I also enjoy the flair for drama here. We don't see Medea doesn't appear right out the gate in the play. You just get a introduction to her through the words of the tutor and the nurse talking amongst themselves about their employers, I guess. They're just sharing a bit of gossip, and every now and then you hear Medea ranting from her room. She's suffering heartbreak, and it's very dramatic. And I do have a flair for drama, so I find it very enjoyable. Like this is ancient Greek people, but I think people today pretty much act the same way when going through heartbreak. Um, Having said that, I'll continue with a little more of the reading. I'm not going to continue at the same place. I'm going to skip through and go to the parts that I think are the most important, because if I wanted to read through the entire play, then you would be stuck with me here for hours. But yeah, I'm going to start in the part with the chorus, and they're talking about Medea. Chorus. I heard her sobbing and wailing, shouting shrill, pitiful accusations against her husband who has betrayed her. She invokes Themis, daughter of Zeus, who witnessed those promises which drew her across from Asia to Hellas, setting sail at night, treading the sole strait, Chian barrier to the Pontic Sea. Medea comes out. She's not shaken with weeping, but cool and self-possessed. And this is an important detail. From her rants that you can hear coming from her room, she sounds distraught, but when she comes out to meet people, she has collected herself. She has gotten her composure together. This is a woman who places a lot of importance in how she's perceived by the world and by others. And this is an important, very important trait about her. Also, the line that she has come across from Asia to Hellas. So Medea is not Greek. Hellas is the ancient term for Greece. And she's a foreigner. She is clearly, the island she's from is clearly in Asia, in this world. And she has come to Hellas or Greece for Jason, who is Greek. And this is also an important detail, that she's a foreigner and she's on foreign lands. I mean, even today, a foreigner invokes suspicion in some places. So you can imagine that for her, being able to be liked by so many of the people there must not have been an easy feat. So that means she doesn't have only some ordinary amount of charm. This is a very charming woman. Anyways, moving on. This is the first time that Medea herself directly addresses the audience, and we just don't hear her voice coming from somewhere off stage. So this is Medea. Women of Corinth, I would not have you censure me. So I have come. Many I know are proud at heart. Indoors or out, but others are ill-spoken of as supercilious. Just because their ways are quiet, there is no justice in the world's censorious eyes. They will not wait to learn a man's true character. Though no wrong has been done them, one look and they hate. Of course a stranger must conform, even a Greek should not annoy his fellows by crass stubbornness. I accept my place, but this blow that has fallen on me was not to be expected. It has crushed my heart. Life has no pleasure left, dear friends. I want to die. Jason was my whole life, he knows that well. Now he has proved himself the most contemptible of men. Surely of all creatures that have life and will, we women are the most wretched. When for an extravagant sum we have bought a husband, we must accept him as possessor of our body. This is to aggravate wrong with worse wrong. Then the great question, will the man we get be bad or good? For women, divorce is not respectable. To repel the man, not possible. Still more, a foreign woman, coming among new laws, new customs, needs the skill of magic. To find out what her home could not teach her, how to treat the man whose bed she shares. And if in this exacting toil we are successful and our husband does not struggle, under the marriage yoke, our life is enviable. Otherwise, that is better. If a man grows tired of the company at home, he can go out and find a cure for tediousness. Beehives are forced to look to one man only, and they will tell us, be at home. Live free from danger, they go out to battle. Fools, I'd rather stand 3 times in the front line than bear one child. Okay, I'm gonna cut it off here, and I wanna talk about this. Reading any of Medea's lines, my first thought is that she would have made a great lawyer. This is a woman who can use rhetoric to its full advantage. She can form an argument in her favor, no matter what it is she's trying to say. She very quickly garners sympathy in her favor. She is very good at describing her wretchedness. And one illuminating fact that comes out about her is that she's not very fond of the whole childbearing thing. And already we've heard her say that she wishes her kids dead. And this was some very bold foreshadowing. This story has been around for a millennium. So, of course, there are going to be spoilers in this video, okay? And so I'm gonna just say right out the gate that this is one of the most outrageous plays for its time, because it shows a woman who chooses to kill her own sons. She murders her own sons while being completely sane. She makes a rational choice to do so. I mean, even today, that makes for a kind of a very outrageous story. Medea was never insane. She was never not in her right mind. Medea is never not in her right mind. If she has one thing, that's possession of herself at all times. This is a woman who revels in her power. And that is something that is very important to her sense of being powerful. So this is somebody who chooses to murder her own kids in the pursuit of revenge. And that is what makes this play so shocking. Here's a character who puts looking powerful to others and making sure that nobody can ever call her a fool or ridicule her. She always has to be in the possession of power, and that is the most important thing to her. In one of the later lines, when she's still talking about how dare Jason betray her, she calls him one of the tribe of Sisyphus. So Sisyphus was one of the Greek gods or titans who was more sympathetic to mortals than most. What she's essentially saying is that how dare a mere mortal ridicule her, who's not a mortal. She's a divine being. She is not a goddess, but also not mortal. And at the end of the play, her divinity is once more emphasized because she flies away on a chariot. So clearly the gods are with her because she is one of them in like the Greek myths. Being able to murder your own children in cold blood will set you apart even in Greek myth, is what I'm saying. And that makes sense for somebody who puts power above everything else. And every Greek tragedy is basically a character study. And this is a character study of Medea and what makes her tick and what drives her. And that will always be power. And this is what the play sort of explores, because it's not that she didn't care about her kids at all. She did. In this play, you find out that she has a little bit of a conflict for a little, like she does hesitate for a bit. She doesn't want to kill her kids. It's not that it doesn't bother her at all, but at the same time, she has this maniacal need for revenge. Jason has to be taught a lesson. And this is the lesson she has decided he needs to be taught. She needs to inflict the most pain she can, because the main thing about Medea is that nobody gets to hurt her and get away with it. People will always pay for it. If there's one thing Medea believes in, it's her own sense of power and that of revenge. So in the conflict between her love for her kids and the need for revenge, and her anger wins. If the saying that, hell had no fury like a woman scorned, ever held any water, it did with Medea. Her anger is almost fun to read because she's just so openly, unapologetically angry. Like, angry is just one of her main character traits, and that's all there is to it. Like, the rage is just unrestrained. I think this is just something very universal, though, that a lot of the worst things that happen in human lives are often fueled by rage. Rage probably wreaks the most havoc in real life as well. And Medea has a lot of it, and she has the power to act on that rage more than most people. And the most interesting thing about this is that at some points of the play, even though Medea is, I guess, in modern times what we would call psychopathic, even then, there are times in this play where you can't help but sympathize with her, because this is a woman who's clearly heartbroken. She's genuinely heartbroken. She's not faking that part. Does she have an extreme reaction to that heartbreak? Oh, yes. Yes, she does. But the heartbreak is very real, and I think almost everybody can relate to it. So it's almost terrifying how relatable Euripides made this psychotic character to like the average person, even now, after all this time. Clearly, Medea is a character who has lasting power, staying power in the mind of the reader across ages. And even as the days, this is a play that's, as most Greek tragedies, it all happens, all of this, many things happens in the course of one day. And even as the day unfolds and Medea just gets more and more evil, she also kills Jason's betrothed, by the way. But I guess it does. I mean, killing is always bad, but this is Greek tragedy. We expect a good kill count, right? But it's really her killing her own kids that makes people gasp and clutch their pearls. She's obviously a woman who places power as her highest priority. And if you think of it that way, her way of thinking, I wouldn't say makes sense, but it makes sense according to her character. Because never mind mythology or fantasy, just think about it from our world, our normal human world, and our annals of history. Who are the historic figures who go down in history books? The kings and the conquistadors. And what makes a king or a conquistador if not sheer bloodlust? Because might is what makes these historical figures stand out. And is that really any different from Medea's motivations and thought process? Medea is basically another power-hungry, bloodthirsty person who intends to stay in power and always be in a position of power. And in that way, this play is essentially about anybody who puts the pursuit of power above everything else. And even the ending of the play, which is a very interesting ending, because I think any audience at any time who have ever watched this play would condemn Media's actions, no matter how angry she is with Jason and how funny we sometimes find her fights with Jason. And Jason is by no means likable, so it's only too easy to sympathize with her heartbreak. But at the same time, you can't help but condemn her killing of her own children. I think audiences always have. Nonetheless, the play ends with her riding off on a chariot, a golden chariot, sent by her grandfather, the sun god. So the gods are on her side because she, like the gods, are merciless and ruthless. And in that world, that is being synonymous with power. Being cold is often a trait of being in power. And is it really any different today? I think that remains the truth for even today. You gotta be cutthroat to win power. Is that not how the world works today as well? So, in a very brutal way, that is the depiction here. And the ending endorses that as well. And before I wrap it up, I kind of want to do the last fight between Medea and Jason. Mainly because, and this is for anyone who has watched Succession, and if you haven't watched it, forgive this tangent, but there's this very popular fight scene between two of the main characters who are married to each other, Tom and Shiv, and they have this big, nasty fight in the last season of the show. And the last fight between Medea and Jason sort of reminds me of that. I mean, it's a terrible, terrible scene that precedes it, but I don't know. Just chalk it down to unethical dark humor, I guess. And so here goes. I'm gonna start reading it from Jason asking her about his sons who are dead by now. Jason, give me my sons for burial and mourning rites. Medea, oh no, I will myself convey them to the temple of Hera Acrea. There in the holy precinct, I will bury them with my own hand to ensure that none of my enemies shall violate or insult their graves, and I will ordain an annual feast and sacrifice to be solemnized forever by the people of Corinth. To expiate this impious murder, I myself will go to Athens, city of Erechteus, to make my home with Aegis, son of Pandion. You, as you deserve, shall die an unheroic death, your head shattered by timber from the Argo's hull. Thus wretchedly your fate shall end the story of your love for me. And Jason, the curse of children's blood be on you, avenging justice blast your being. Medea, but God will hear your imprecation, oath breaker, guest deceiver, liar. Jason, unclean, abhorrent, child destroyer. Medea, go home, your wife waits to be buried. Jason, I go, a father once, now childless. Medea, you grieve too soon, old age is coming. Jason, children, how dare you wear? How dear you wear? Medea, to their mother, not to you. Jason, dear, and you murdered them? Medea, yes, Jason, to break your heart. Jason, I long to fold them in my arms. To kiss their lips would comfort me. Medea, now you'll have loving words, now kisses for them. Then you disown them, send them into exile. Jason, for God's sake, let me touch their gentle flesh. Medea, you shall not, it is a waste of breath to ask. Jason, Zeus, do you hear how I am mocked? Rejected by this savage beast, polluted with her children's blood. But now, as time and strength permit, I will lament this grievous day and call the gods to witness how you kill my sons and now refuse to let me touch or bury them. Would God I had not bred them or ever lived to see them dead, you their destroyer. During this speech, the chariot has moved out of sight, so she's basically just stalked off and left him yelling. But the exchange is almost modern. Maybe people really don't change across time, but with that, I will wrap it up. And this has been a very long video, so thank you so much for bearing with me. And thanks so much for watching. And I hope I see you next time.